What is going on, everybody? My name is Dakota and welcome back to Kotascologne. Today we're going to be going over a requested video, and that is going to be some of the fragrances that I am going to have rolled out for this spring. Spring is getting dangerously close to us, especially down in some of the southern states. Pretty much all week it's been in the high 60s, 70s. So it is very much springy outside, so the perfect time to make this video. I got my green shirt on. Hopefully it's going to be spring feeling. Without further ado, let's get into it. So typically what I look for in a springtime fragrance is something that's going to be fresh, it's going to be clean, it's maybe have a hint of florals, it's something that's going to feel relaxing, fresh, and inviting instead of more of the darker, richer, warmer. These are going to be maybe a little more tropical, a little more fruit-based, something that's also going to have an incredibly green nature to it that's going to feel like the welcoming of trees blooming, flowers blooming, and everything else. So the first one that's going to start us off on this list today is going to be Varvatos Artisan Teal. This fragrance is like a salty caramel kind of fragrance, but it's not sweet in the sense of like a gourmand richness. It stays very light, it stays very salty. To me, this has kind of a clean mineral background to it. A lot of that saltiness can kind of give me a little bit of a tropical feel to it. It's nothing that's very intense, but it's definitely there. It floats all the way through the fragrance. This has some beautiful greens to it. It's got some florals to it. And as far as the performance go, it's really not bad. For the concentration of this, I get about 4 or 5 hours out of it. But the biggest shiner on this fragrance is going to be the price point. This is a 75 mil, I do believe. I think I picked this up for like 30 bucks. The Varvatos line is definitely more of the budget friendly. That's kind of where we're starting this one out at, but this is definitely one that every single spring is always a reach for me. Just, it smells good, it smells clean, it smells fresh, while having a little bit of like a salty mineral vibe to it. The caramel gives it a touch of sweetness. It's not like that bubblegum summer kind of sweet. It does stay a little bit more of a background note. It's definitely not something you pick up on right away. But yeah, hands down, this is one of the easiest summer reaches I have in my collection. So next up on the list is going to be Coach Green. I will argue that this might be one of the best spring fragrances I have in my entire collection. This has such a beautiful kiwi note to it that is almost like a fresh tropical that can smell at times mossy. Like the background of this has like a touch of that like mossy earthiness to it, but in the forefront it just stays so tropical, fruity, fresh, light, that this fragrance to me hands down is the easiest reach pretty much in all of spring that I have. I've only had this bottle for a little over a year, and I have cracked a monstrous dent in this. Hands down, I will be getting another bottle the moment this one runs out. And that's actually where this fragrance is going to shine the most. This fragrance is dummy cheap. I think you can get a tester of this for like 33 bucks. And it's one that you could spray heavy, you could spray light. Now, the performance on this does lack just a little. This is one that you may have to spray a little bit heavier. But as far as smelling different with having a mass appeal vibe with a fragrance that is going to get you a lot of compliments, actually, this one is definitely going to do it. And like I said, at the price point that you can get this at, it's almost impossible not to reach for this. I've talked to a few people that's won the giveaways. I think about 3 different people has wanted to try this one. 2 out of the 3 has went out and bought a bottle. Like, this stuff is just really, really good. And I feel like it is one of the most slept on fragrances pretty much out there in the game. Everybody wants to hate on it because it's Coach, or because it's cheap, or because the performance isn't that good. And is some of those points fair? Yeah. But for the profile that you get and just everything about this fragrance, this thing is just an absolute rock star. But yeah, that is going to be the second one on the list, and that is going to be Coach Green. So third up on the list is going to be Valentino Born in Roma Green Extravaganza. This is another fragrance that kind of got overlooked, I feel like, just a little bit, especially in a lot of people's collections, because this fragrance, for being more of a simple and linear kind of fragrance, is really, really good. To me, whenever you get that citrusy coffee opening off the front of this, it smells like a good, crisp, dewy spring morning. Like the still dew outside, you're on the front porch, you're drinking a little bit of coffee, you're doing whatever you got to do to get your day going. That's kind of the vibe that I get off this. It has such a nice lightness to it that the coffee's not bitter at all. It's very clean, it's very crisp, but it also has a good enough dry down to it with some of the vetiver in the base of this that can get a little bit earthy. It can get a little bit dark while staying very light, very airy. It's going to be clean all the way across. Like, there's not going to be any rough edges to this. It is a very well-rounded fragrance. Where I feel like a lot of people tend to hate on this a little bit is because it comes from Valentino. And Valentino is known for having more of floral, sweet. Everybody thinks of Valentino Intense or the original Eau de Toilette or Coral Fantasy. Those are kind of where everybody's mind goes. And this was such a different break from that with some of that coffee citrus that you get off the top, where I feel like a lot of people disliked it just because it had the Valentino name and it went in a dramatically different direction. This one is about middle of the road when it comes to price-wise. Performance-wise, it is pretty decent on the skin. I get 5 to 6 hours, which I'm not really going to expect more than that for a lot of the spring scents, because that's when you're going to start getting into florals. You're going to start getting into citruses, your green apples, your lemons, your bergamot, stuff like that. Those tend to not be the heaviest hitting fragrances, but they tend to smell so good, especially blended in a way that can give you an exact thought. Like in my case, the first time I smelled this, it smells like a nice crisp spring morning. Everything's coming into bloom. Everything's waking up. And that's kind of where this fragrance went for me, especially when I first got it. Now, the more that I was able to wear it last year, kind of changed up on me just a little bit. But still, this is going to be an absolute easy reach for anybody in the spring. But again, that is going to be Valentino's Born in Roma Green Extravaganza. So next up on the list is going to be Jean Paul Gaultier's Le Beau Paradise Garden. This bottle is almost empty. I got this bottle as an incredibly low partial. I've got a new bottle of it chilling around, but I don't want to open it until I kind of run this one out. So for aesthetic reasons, this one might look a little rough. One of the things that I absolutely love the most about this fragrance, as far as the Le Beau line, this one to me felt the most complete. This one had a clear directive when it came out, and it kind of stuck to it. This has such a beautiful kind of sweet fig coconut kind of vibe that gets extremely fruity, that stays light and aromatic. The sweetness isn't overdone. It's not something that's going to be cloying. It's not something that's going to kind of give you a headache or anything like that. The mint that they used on this is not like the mint that they typically go with. This one is very light. It's very softer. I really kind of like the salted ginger vibe that you can get when you first spray this. And on top of that, the way the coconut and the fig just blend together on this makes this fragrance feel very different from stuff they've released before, but also keeps it very clean, very fruity, very fresh, very green. This is more of a spring and summer kind of fragrance. You can definitely float this one between the two. If you're into a tropical fragrance that is just going to give you all day performance, this is going to be one for you. Like I said, if you're in the southern states, which is where I am, this fragrance is pretty much going to be a spring all the way into summer kind of feel. And a lot of the sweetness that you're going to get off of this in the dry down isn't going to be that like cloying, overwhelming kind of sweetness. It does stay very soft. It does stay very inviting while staying warm and fresh at the same time. The heat is definitely going to be this one's friend. It is good enough performance. You could wear it with a little bit colder out, but given the time of year that we're leaning into, this is definitely fixing to rear its head, and I'm probably going to be hammering this one pretty hard this spring. But hands down, I think one of the things that I love the most about this fragrance, for it being very tropical heavy, for it having a lot of that coconut, it's actually the saltiness that I get off of this. It almost reminds me of like an ocean breeze kind of vibe. It makes me feel like I'm somewhere down near an ocean, feet in the sand, and I absolutely love that about this fragrance. Some people say that that can give off a little bit of a synthetic vibe. I really don't get much of that. To me, this fragrance does smell a little more quality. It does smell fairly natural, because it is crazy how some of the saltness and fig coming off of this can smell very realistic. That is why this one is also going to be an incredibly easy reach for the spring. And again, that is going to be Jean Paul Gaultier Le Beau Paradise Garden. So next up on the list is going to be Bvlgari Man Rain Essence. This one is kind of a tricky toss-up between spring and summer. This is another one that will definitely float between the two. So as far as a freshie goes, you can kind of hammer this one pretty hard. One of the things that I absolutely love the most about this is this has such a wonderful like floral green kind of muskiness that stays incredibly light. And I think what I love most about this fragrance is this fragrance uses a tea note. So black teas, green teas, fragrances that use stuff like that, I am kind of drawn to just a little bit because they give off such like a wonderful, clean, almost bitterness. So this fragrance can have a little bit of an edge to it. It can be a little bit sharp. As far as like a green floral fragrance, it can feel just a little bit of like a mineralic kind of sharpness to it, but that doesn't stay on your skin very long. To me, that dries out very quickly. And I love kind of the florally tea, citrus kind of vibe that I tend to keep off this fragrance. For this being more of a fresh fragrance, it has a little bit of a warmth to it, but that's definitely more of like a background kind of back in the shade thing. The main thing you're going to get off this is wonderful florals. You're going to get some good muskiness off of it. That muskiness is going to make it feel light. Some of the floral citruses can make it feel maybe a little bit of a powdery nature to it. But the thing that I love the most, again, is just going to be the way the tea gives this thing kind of bitter green vibe while staying very light, very fresh. Maybe like the tiniest touch of soapiness here. Like you don't really get a whole lot of that, but you just get a hair bit of soapy. The only thing that I'll warn some people about this fragrance is some of the florals that you can get off this fragrance. They're not going to be like your typical what you would think of floral, like your lavenders, your orange blossoms, or anything like that. They're going to be more of like your raw kind of flowers, like literally going out, grabbing a fistful of flowers and kind of smelling them type thing. But mixed with some of the tea, with how fresh this is, with some of the greens and citruses coming off this thing, to me is just absolutely amazing. This is one that for some reason I was completely against buying. And I think I picked this up on like last year's 4th of July sale or something like that. I think I got this for like 35 bucks. I think now this is the 60 mil. I think these run closer to that $40 to $50 range. I could be wrong on that one. So price for what you get is pretty rock solid. The performance on this is kind of where I was surprised a little bit. I did not expect this to last more than 4 or 5 hours on my skin. This thing lasted about 7 or 8 hours. I was blown away by that. Normally the floral, the fresh, the citrusy kind of stuff doesn't tend to last that long on my skin. This one definitely proved me wrong. This one did very well. But again, that is going to be Bvlgari Man Rain Essence. So to round this out, I'm going to go with a niche. If you stuck around the channel long enough, you can probably guess what it is. It is going to be Parfums de Marly Greenley. This fragrance was one of the first like green, spicy, kind of crisp on the nose fragrances that I really fell in love with. This thing has such a natural property to it. This has such a realistic green, fresh, crisp apple note that comes off the top of this. That stays incredibly fresh. It stays very floral. It stays very light. And in the background of it, it has a little bit of like an earthiness. You get some of the moss that comes through on this. You get a touch of warmth coming off of this as it dries down. This uses a cedar note to it. The cedar is not over dominating at all. For the most part, everything you're going to get off this fragrance is going to be very light. It's going to be very green. It's going to have some touch of earthiness to it. And it's going to dry down with wood and floral undertones all the way going through the back. This one to me has such a crisp apple that is almost mouth-watering. This is like a gourmand crisp apple to me. The citruses that comes off the top of this are absolutely beautiful. And the best part about this fragrance is this thing smells incredibly natural. I feel like as far as the Parfum de Marly line goes, this one, as far as the fresh ones, do kind of tend to get overlooked. This one and Galloway, to me specifically, I feel like are incredibly overlooked, especially Galloway. Everybody sleeps on that one, but we can make that one in another day. The way this one dries down just makes it feel like such a complete fragrance that you should be able to wear this pretty much anytime. If it's spring, summer, fall, even winter, this thing, as natural as it smells, is going to have amazing performance. There's not anything harsh about this whatsoever. This is going to have a big mass appeal vibe to it. This is going to be more of a complimented fragrance than not. Now, some people argue a little bit that the price point compared to a niche fragrance, that it doesn't really match up. And for the most part, it's kind of hard to disagree with that. But for getting 125 mil on discounters for about that 170-ish range, depending on where you can find it, or especially from the fragrance groups, that's where this thing really, really starts to shine. Because for the performance that you get, for the profile that you get, for everything that comes with this fragrance, I would happily buy this fragrance again. But if you're a lover of fresh, clean, crisp fragrances that has one of the most realistic, mouth-watering apple notes that dries down with beautiful florals, woods, and everything in between, this is definitely going to be a fragrance for you. Again, that is going to be Parfums de Marly Greenley. So that is going to get us wrapped up. As of now, those are about the 6 fragrances that I'm probably going to be the most excited to wear, especially moving into the spring. Some of them I kind of wore a little bit over the winter just because I genuinely love them. Others, unfortunately, had to wait a little bit. But every single one of these fragrances should be easy to find. The majority of them are actually going to be very budget friendly. They're going to have a mass appeal effect to them. And for the most part, as far as like spring freshies go, they kind of, for me, hit exactly what I'm looking for and exactly what I love to wear. But that is going to be enough yapping for this video. That's going to get us wrapped up. As always, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for subscribing, for sticking around, staying tuned, keeping up with the channel, commenting, all the feedback. If you would, leave me some comments down there below. Let me know what your favorite spring freshies are, or if you've got some spring heavies. If you're someone who loves wearing heavy fragrances in the spring, that's fine too. Let me know what y'all like to wear in the spring. But we're going to end it right there. As always, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.